the bottom line is cost. That's the simplest starting point, I think, for any company. They identify regulations or requirements that they need to meet, or they have a risk around security that they think we don't understand, or they have a need to be compliant with certifications that require that role.
Thinking about the particular challenges of customers who are looking for a vCISO, you've got those who have a gap in between their permanent CISO. Quite difficult to hire people permanently, and actually when you're going through that process, you can end up with a significant gap in leadership. Having a vCISO in there to bridge the gap to either continue work that the previous CISO was doing, or quite often there's a transformation requirement, so the vCISO will come in to uplift the capability to the next level of maturity, and that could be in response to a new regulation. It could be demands coming from the customers of that company.
Yes.
It could be they've had an incident or a near miss if they're lucky.
Do you think, one of the things I think I sometimes see is that within the role, the CISO role is a leadership role. And quite often you'll find that you promote within organisations to encourage culture, but that sometimes leaves you with someone that may be very technically capable in the role, but doesn't understand the strategy and the other things that need to be thought of within a CISO. So
yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're looking at maturing your capability.
Yeah.
You might not necessarily have those skills in house, and it might not always be the best option to bring someone up from inside. A CISO, an internal permanent CISO, is typically accountable for the things that they do. The benefit of having a vCISO, though, is that you can maintain that accountability inside the company, whether it's with the CTO, the CIO, or another member of the permanent senior leadership. But you get that independent advice. They can also be agnostic. They can be independent. And one of the things that a lot of companies are saying, that I don't know whether I'll get the right information, whether someone's going to give me is going to speak truth.
Having an external third party provide you that guidance and advice can allow you still to lead and own that accountability. You get, like you say, that third party perspective, an outsider's perspective, and maybe someone with, a perspective coming from other companies that are seeing similar trends or similar changes. Having someone else come in, especially if you've got to face off to a board that's got to spend a lot of money, is a very sensible way of shutting down that risk.
And I think anyone that's done a role like this internally will absolutely recognise that. So even if it's just to validate what they've already been told internally, again, just for their own peace of mind, to make sure that it is, it is good practice.
If you're worried about your CISO's ability to deliver, there's a fundamental challenge between you and your CISO that you need to solve. At the flip side, looking at how you measure to other areas, that's where a vCISO could potentially add value, but you need to do it in conjunction with your existing CISO or security function, because you might not have a CISO, you might just have a head of security or a CISO function. You need to do it in conjunction with them, and like any cultural change, you have to do it with those people supportive of you, I think, because if they're not, they're going to become a blocker to your idea of what you believe is doing the right thing.
Yeah, you're right. It can definitely be challenging to sort of identify the effectiveness of your existing team. Some people will try and measure everything and then do nothing well, rather than saying, here are maybe 5 or 10 key risk indicators. How are we doing against equivalent companies in the market? And that's always really challenging.
The reality is every organisation, even within the own sector, has its own challenges. So the best way is a foundational approach, I think, in my view, is find the core foundational things that the threats that establish your sector, your industry and your business, and just focus on some foundational. There is no point looking to the sky if you haven't got the basics right. If your users are clicking on everything, or you're not filtering what's coming into them and providing them helpful training, then there is no point spending millions of pounds locking down monitoring and things like that. mean, I think for me that almost comes down to the difference between an employee and a contractor. Actually, if you're long-standing, 5, 10, 20 years, you are going to be better than anyone else ever could be at that job. Almost certainly you are going to know that job inside and out, the risks that surround it. And the problem with it is it also means you tend to make a lot of assumptions and assume. So anything you do regularly, you assume. With the contract mindset or consultative mindset, you tend to have limited detailed knowledge of any one particular organization. And so you may miss things as far as the detailed, unique cultural changes, technical implementations, the debt they may have, and all the other things. But you bring an absolute variety of how all these other companies solve this problem. The vCISO can bring in that wealth of knowledge because they've just worked with another company, and they can then bring that knowledge to the next company.
I think a lot of companies will look within their own sector when they're hiring people, and they will produce role descriptions that say must have X number of years experience specifically in this sector. That's a conversation for another day, but it does limit your pool of available resources for permanent people. But it also means that if you're hiring people with that mindset of only people with experience in this sector can understand this sector's problem. But a lot of the regulations are across, for instance, all operators of critical national infrastructure, or all companies that perform specific roles within a supply chain. And actually, a lot of those companies don't live within that particular sector. And having someone come in who can say, well, your business is very specific and your sector has specific regulations. When we take that off, a lot of the challenges are the same.
New technologies are always coming in. I think one of the statements I used to always see, my dad always used to actually, and he's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The reality is that if you're sitting still, everything else is moving forward past you. AI is a particular challenge in that it won't even know how it got to its own answer. It will often get an input, it will make an assessment, and it will give an output. I do think you need to validate why you're doing it, what's the driver, is there a business reason to do that, what the risks are. AI external, often the rights to the data you post in there is free for that company to use and post. So you post your confidential information onto an external AI system, you've given them the right, not just given them access to data, but the right to post that data publicly. And if that's confidential data, you've made confidential data public and breached your compliance requirements. If it's internal, and the service internal, you may have a flip where the AI has access to all data, and so to data that everyone has access to, and it uses the users, but they never see it because they don't have access to it.
They didn't know they
could access it, and suddenly you've given them very clear, very salient information, summaries of data they never even thought or should have had access to. So I think those two are sort of examples, but you need to embrace it, and you need to do it sensibly and thoughtfully and for the right why. It's always the why.
And for instance, companies that say we're going to ban AI because it's scary and we don't like it, they're the ones that are going to probably see the biggest issue of their users going out to external large language models. And actually there's been lots of information that's come back on this where they've found the sort of things that are in those are, well, there's a lot of sales collateral in there because salespeople are using it to create proposals. They're using it to create sales collateral. You've also got HR data in there. You've got financial data in there because it's analysing the data and summarize this document for me. Give me some feedback on this. If you haven't got an AI within the organisation that can do that for you, people they're just going to push it out to an external one. The internal one, I think, comes back to data governance. So again, everyone's going, we're going to sign up for this particular service that just happens to come as free with our productivity suite. Yes. And as part of that, what they don't realise is that even though there is, they might have really good controls on the AI in terms of it's only going to surface information that those people have access to.
I think AI simply highlights potentially a lack in governance and control that's previously been there, and brings to the surface a lot of technical debt that companies have so far been able to get away with. You've got to quantify and analyse your risk.
I think you have to be very clear about what you want to change, what you want the delivery to be, and look at what success looks like. Can take a lot of the workload, a lot of the manual workload out, and leave time available for people to do the more complex analysis.
It can simplify what you're doing and reduce the risk around it. I've always had a mandatory requirement to know what the regulations are within the sectors that they operate. I think the new change is the growth in those regulations and the speed at which they grow. The simplest answer is that you have a responsibility to make sure you understand the data you hold, the industry you sit in, and the regulations that apply. I don't think it's a particularly complex thing to do, but getting third-party advice is the simplest way of doing it.
I think there's a lot of duplication, there's a lot of benefits that certainly small, medium businesses can get from looking at where they can do something once and comply with multiple regulations or multiple standards.